Oh no, the DC relaunch has trapped the Amazing Spider-Man Classics gang in 1998, while they'll be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man reboot. Last episode, they reviewed the Amazing Spider-Man, and this episode will be Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and Webspinners. Will they be able to get back to their regular reviews of Classic Spidey? Find out in this episode of Amazing Spider-Man Classics.
Hey, guys.
Okay, we are back to look at Peter Parker's Spider-Man number 1, The New Beginning. It was released on November 18th. This is, of course, Volume 2, number 1, and Donovan Grant is going to tell us all about it.
Peter Parker's Spider-Man, The New Beginning, first spectacular issue. The cover image is John Romita Jr. drawn Spider-Man on a big web over a bunch of buildings. It's actually not more extravagant than that. It's just sort of an image. And this issue is written by Howard Mackie, illustrated by John Romita, and inked by Scott Hanna.
And the title of the comic is a lie, because Peter Parker is not Spider-Man.
But again, it's like, if these series aren't about Spider-Man, then why are they called Spider-Man? They're both about Peter, but they're called Spider-Man.
They should be Peter Parker watching Spider-Man, and Peter Parker watching the Amazing Spider-Man.
It should be, instead of Peter Parker Spider-Man, it should be Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Like, and. Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
Peter Parker, in parentheses, and Spider-Man.
Peter Parker's girlfriend, Lois Lane. Peter Parker's pal, Spider-Man.
Peter Parker's friend, Betty Brant. Okay.
Spider-Man cross-dresses and has to marry Lois, and then goes to a planet and becomes stretchy, and then a turtle, and never mind.
So, we start off things with Peter Parker at the scene of a prisoner breakout. These armored villains called the Agents of Anarchy are breaking out this character called the Ranger, who, as Peter is describing through the information from the police scanner that he somehow heard, is an international terrorist. He takes pictures of the scene and is watching Spider-Man fight the Agents of Anarchy, but sacre bleu, he's Spider-Man, or at least he was. So the readers are left wondering who this new character is. Peter is watching, and he's sort of not really getting to the moment. He's really just dodging all the flying villains in his way, and he even takes a picture of Spider-Man and Spider-Man's knocked on his butt. When the Ranger starts to escape and Spider-Man runs after him, the cops start to set upon Peter and saying, like, "What are you doing? How'd you get past the police line?" Until Betty Brant saves the day by saying her name is Betty Brant, and she'll write a bad report on them in the Daily Bugle if they don't let him through. So Betty and Peter walk back to the Daily Bugle, where Betty turns in her story, where J. Jonah Jameson completely manhandles it and has the banner headline reading, "Spider-Man and accomplice in terrorist escape." Obviously, this is not true, and everyone in the entire world can see this, but Jonah's not having any of it. And he says if Betty cannot agree with his editorial policy, she can hit the road. It's funny, it says Jameson's not actually the editor, he's the publisher. And this is reminded by Rob. He says, "Oh, don't worry, I'm the editor-in-chief, so..."
He says that now! Not 2 minutes ago. Go ahead.
No, he just watches Jameson act like a douche and like says, don't worry. Oh, that's for nothing. I'll handle everything because I'm Robbie Robertson. So, okay. Peter gets a page on his beeper. So this comic is trying very hard to be with the times with this modern technology, and is worried about his Aunt May. We cut to Chicago, where we see Senator Stuart Ward, who has been mentioned earlier in the issue as an up-and-coming presidential candidate, overseeing the window in his hotel room, when suddenly Kirby Crackle from a picture in his room says that people have died because of you, and he could have stopped it from happening. The crackle sparks are all around the room until Senator Ward yells for it to shut up, and as he throws his glass of alcoholic content at it, his armed bodyguards with armed like submachine guns and silenced pistols and everything bust through, so we know definitely something's up with the senator. Back at New York City, Aunt May is not answering the phone at home, so Peter starts to worry and, against all reason, jumps across the rooftops as he used to as Spider-Man. He gets back into his posh apartment to find that Aunt May is alive and well, and that she was worried about him because, as we all know, he's such a frail and weakling of a boy. Peter's happy when Aunt May tells him that Mary Jane will arrive a few days early from her photo shoot, and Aunt May tells him not to get riled up because he's a weakling. And we never get tired of this. The next day at JFK International Airport, Peter meets with Jill Stacy to meet Mary Jane. Mary Jane is surrounded by a bunch of guards who they wonder what the big deal is, and then they realize it's actually Senator Ward coming off the airplane. But Peter sees a man lurking in the shadows, and it's revealed to be the Ranger again, running after Senator Ward, saying that he will pay for whatever he has done. Peter starts flashing back to Amazing Fantasy 15, and starts to exposit his origins for being Spider-Man yet again, when all of a sudden, just as he's about to do something, the Spider-Man from the last issue and earlier in this issue, jumps into the fray to save the day. A battle ensues, and at one point Spider-Man is knocked down, and the Ranger is just about to take down Senator Ward. Peter knocks out the Ranger. He doesn't knock out the Ranger, but he strikes at the Ranger, holding back some strength so he doesn't give away that he has superpowers. Spider-Man comes out and starts beating on the Ranger into submission, and as Peter described, Spider-Man is acting totally irrational, like an embarrassed kid lashing out at a bully. Spider-Man realizes that Peter is staring at him and says, "You'll be sorry, you'll all be sorry, stop following me." So, yeah, that's certainly something to raise your eyebrow at.
Or even both eyebrows, I would say.
Or all three eyebrows.
Da, da, da. Just alternate them, Spock style. The police arrive, and the senator is safe, and the Ranger's taken down. Mary Jane is proud that Peter didn't jump into as Spider-Man himself. Peter can't help wondering what the connection is between Senator Ward and the Ranger, and his hunch is that whatever it will be, he will not like what he finds. Okay, the end.
Okay, so I had a few notes on this, but I'll let y'all go first. Josh, did you like this more or less than The Amazing Story?
I liked it more than The Amazing Story. It didn't have as many pitfalls as The Amazing Story had. It certainly had its moments. Like small plot holes, but Peter was supposed to be with Betty to take the photos of Senator Ward. Robbie assigned them to do it together. And when they're picking up Mary Jane at the airport, he casually mentions, "Oh yeah, Betty must be there, getting ready to do her interview." Wasn't Peter supposed to be a part of that? Okay. Just like little notes and inconsistency like that. When Peter takes the picture...
We could explain that as Betty Brant is asking the same question, why didn't Peter come with her?
Then show that on the page.
Yes, they should show that on the panel, but it is no prizable.
Yeah, we don't say, like, it's like an Amazing where, it's like, well, maybe Jonah wants his old job back. Like, we as readers shouldn't be like, there's show and not tell, but then there's not showing anything at all. Like, it's
being too vague and if it's too vague, then it takes the reader out of the story and just wastes time.
I know it sounds like I'm being picky here because I get on them for exposition, but then when they don't exposit enough, but like this is just the beginning when Peter at the beginning of the issue is an idiot. Spider-Man is trying to stop a terrorist from escaping. So what does Peter do when not all of these like armored guys are down? Peter goes right up to Spider-Man's face and takes a picture with a flashbulb in his face, which should, by all accounts, temporarily blind Spider-Man. Well, at least he got a good picture of Spider-Man, but wait, he's so close to his face that Peter probably got a picture of Spider-Man's nose, which Jonah will not be able to use. So Peter got a picture which is absolutely worthless, and he's temporarily blinded Spider-Man so that this terrorist can now escape. Well done. I hope that doesn't sound too negative, but I mean, look, what is the point? Look at it.
Well, okay, because you are so mad. Like, Peter does this, and for the story reasons, it's to differentiate what you are used to seeing Peter Parker do. Instead of helping this Spider-Man who is a rookie, he takes a picture of Spider-Man who was knocked down for money. That's done for story reasons to illustrate the difference between the here and now and what you're used to seeing. In the context of the story, it's not great for Peter but he is trying so hard not to jump into it that I think that's something he would think to do instead of like help him up on his feet or whatever. He just takes a picture. It's not 100% intelligent, but it's not pointless either.
I got a kick out of the fact that he was grading Spider-Man. Like, he doesn't know who the Spider-Man is, but he's just sitting there taking pictures, watching him work, and the whole time he's like, how he would do it compared to how this Spider-Man is doing it.
I mentioned this quote unquote off air, but we joked about in the old issues how Aunt May was always trying to stop the Brandt and Parker romance. So it's funny that like years later, the second that Peter agrees to go out to coffee with Betty Brandt, the second that he does, his pager goes off because of Aunt May. And then when he goes there, she's like, "Oh my, I didn't mean to page you. I don't know how to work these things." As she's like smiling slyly. Ha ha ha, Betty Brant will never have coffee with my Peter. We get more of the whole Jonah and Robbie stuff here, and I don't have anything more to say about it that I didn't say last issue, except, hey, where's Robbie to jump in and defend? At the end, Peter says that he has a hunch that he's not going to like what he finds about the Senator Ward mystery. Something tells me that as the readers, we won't like it either. I'm going to guess that, like with the Scorpion, we're never going to get a satisfying conclusion to the Senator Ward stuff. But
you don't have any faith in Howard Mackie at all, do you?
I don't. I'm jaded, but I did like the scene at the airport where like MJ practically tackles Peter, and Jill is like amused at first, like, "Oh, come on, guys! You ever see a Supermodel in Love?" And then Jill's like, "Okay, this is still going on. I'm embarrassed." I thought that was a funny moment.
And I would totally ditch the Senator Ward interview to have Mary Jane wrap her legs around my waist.
Yes, and you would also totally have the writer of the plot explain it.
Going back a little bit, though, we did get a clone reference there on page 5 or 6, and I kind of like that they still make that running gag where every time he sees another Spider-Man, he thinks it's a clone.
Yeah, I mean, Clone Saga, they're kind of trying to wash their hands of it a little bit because it's been years, but they'll still make the sly references to it. I mean, we were having Ben supporting cast members, appear in Sensational up until recently, and I mean, it's not like Ben Reilly's ever going to be forgotten, because he played such an integral role in the books. He was headlining the books for a while, so you can't just, wash that away like it never happened.
I feel like, when we look back on this decade, a decade from now, that the Ben Reilly Clone Saga is going to sort of be the icon of 90s Spider-Man, and there's no way that Marvel's ever going to try to wash that away.
Why would they?
Why would they? It is such a huge part of his history. I did think that Betty Brant was a bit of a badass when she was telling off the NYPD. It was sort of it's almost like they're trying to turn her into a Lois Lane, which I kind of like.
Ever since she became a reporter, that's kind of been like the thing. Like it's kind of like she's taken Ned Leeds' place, like in the Spider-Man narrative, because for a while before Ben Urich was created, Ned Leeds was the go-to reporter whenever you were working on a story or something. And now that Ned's gone, and if Ben Urich doesn't really fit like the narrative as well, they'll use Betty Brant, and it's a different role for her. And surprising to say, I actually like that. Don't make her too much of a carbon copy of Lois Lane, but it works for the stories, and it worked for the stories that they did right before this reboot.
I liked that Aunt May was saying she's too old for pagers and call waiting. I thought that was typical Aunt May. I realized that that's the kind of humor that a lot of people were glad to be done away with whenever she was dead, but it is kind of classic Aunt May. Well, I think it's funny because I have a cell phone now, and just wait till Aunt May has to deal with cell phones.
Well, call waiting is complicated. I always screw it up.
Well, you say this is typical classic Aunt May. We have another godforsaken reference. Anna, dear, let me call you back. I think Peter to me. You know how delicate he is. After she tells him that Mary Jane's coming home, he's like, "Yes, settle down, Peter. You know how frail you are." I mean, again, every single time I see this, it's like, do we really need her to be brought back to life? Because next time I go to my shop, I want to ask somebody, or go to my store near the spinner rack, I want to ask somebody, did anybody miss this? Did anybody miss having our hero just berated by this older woman who's completely like 2 centuries out of date with reality?
He cannot say, "Hooray, my wife is alive," without my wife is coming home, without his aunt being afraid that if he says "yay" too hard, he might have a heart attack.
And Aunt May had grown out of this a bit in the 80s and early 90s before she was killed. I mean, she wasn't as bad. It feels like they've brought back 1965 Aunt May.
Exactly. It feels as though they popped out the newest copy of Amazing Spider-Man Essential 1 with its black and red back.
Somebody
border.
read The Essential of Spider-Man in the Masterworks and said, "Oh, that's Aunt May. Let's do that."
Well, that's the thing, though. You do not define a character by their earliest appearance. You define the character by how... this is preachy, but you define a character by how that early experience evolved through time and that some of their experiences are now. And yeah, Aunt May's old, and how long was I forgot how long she was supposed to be kidnapped by Osborn. But seriously, it's
like, Don, if I met you when you were 22, I wouldn't treat you like the 9-year-old Don I'm talking to now. I would treat you like 22-year-old Don and who you've become.
Yeah, you would make a lot of sexual references, and you would talk about girls that I would understand the jokes because I would be older, as opposed to now where you guys just wait until I'm out of the room. It will be different. It will be different dynamic.
I can just hear adult Donovan screaming sex.
Well, I don't even know what sex is. So I can't imagine myself ever doing that.
Yeah, girls are icky. I understand. You'll learn.
But you get my point. you get what I'm saying there. I mean, you said you enjoyed the fact that she didn't like the cell phone thing, and I thought that was cute. But just how she regards Peter makes
that
me
part I could do with less of.
Right.
Because we had it a couple times in the other issue, and now we have it a couple times here, or at least once in this one.
I maintain that the worst one is coming up in Webspinners.
Yes, but that's a whole other thing, though, because that's a different era. But anyways, we'll look at that in a second. Okay, so the Ranger.
In the eyes of a Ranger.
It's kind of out of nowhere to me because, faux Spider-Man is beating up these green armored dudes, and we think that that's the bad guy. And then suddenly there's this Ranger. And he's attacking Senator Ward, and he has a really funky stylized R and a jacket because a long trench coat is what the villains are wearing these days. And weird face tattoos. And I don't even know if that's facial hair or more tattoos. So what do y'all think of the Ranger, his look, and what he's doing here?
I think he looks very MTV. I mean, he's wearing this like kind of like vinyl boots and pants and everything. And what are those weapons he has? I'm not saying it's bad. It's very, very modernized. It's very timely. I mean,
we don't watch MTV in my house because we're Christians.
They don't show that many music videos anymore. Like, you can watch, The Real World, or I love Daria. Daria is hilarious.
Yeah, but there's always Beavis and Butthead, and that's just not our thing.
I think Beavis and Butthead ended a few years ago.
I think it's been off for a little bit, but
it paved the way for South Park, and South Park's evil.
South Park, my parents will not let me watch South Park. That's like the most lewd thing on there. I could watch a few episodes. About a year or two ago, like, the big event with South Park was they were going to reveal who Cartman's dad was.
My main thing that I take away from this issue is that this is more of like what I like to see from Spider-Man because it feels closer to the Peter Parker run that Howard Mackie did, and I'm not sure if that's John Romita Jr. necessarily. It's obviously much lighter, but the exposition feels less intrusive and less rampant, and it feels more sensible. I mean, it's not like I can't believe it was my life was like this until this happened and this happened and this. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I really don't like the cartoony Yosemite Sam style J. Jonah Jameson or the annoying as heckaroo Aunt May, but I just kind of like how Peter is written here. I would be very surprised if next month Peter Parker is not Spider-Man again, because this issue ends like he'll try to find out what Senator Ward's secret is with the Ranger. So even though I'm not digging how the story is, it feels like it's going to end almost immediately with him not Spider-Man.
The Amazing issue heavy-handedly set up a status quo and reviewed things heretofore. This issue sets up a story and a mystery and uses the characters as a part of the storytelling instead of, heavy-handedly telling you where the characters are in life. I feel like this was more of a Spider-Man story. I mean, more of a typical Spider-Man storytelling rather than as a number one status quo book.
Still feels very weird that Peter Parker is not Spider-Man, just watching the things, but
yeah, that's definitely strange. And I do like how Spider-Man is getting annoyed with Peter Parker always being there whenever he shows up.
Agreed. Yeah, I like the fact that they are starting to have a little bit of a banter. That's quite I suppose, some sort of symbolism or whatever.
And that is all I have on the main story. Anybody else got anything?
I'm good.
Well, there's the scintillating scrapbook at the back where it has like designs for Peter Parker, Aunt May, Joe Robertson, J. Jonah Jameson, and the Daily Bugle. And I thought that was pretty good. But for the main story, that would pretty much be it.
Yeah, we can talk about the scrapbook and the backup. I like the art in the scrapbook. I like Peter Parker's very broad-shouldered. He's a very manly man.
He is.
That's how John Romita Jr. drew him. You know.
Yeah, Mary Jane's kind of delicious. And although I do think I prefer John Byrne's Mary Jane in that bikini as far as just a girl I'd like to take home and do things to. But yeah, this is some really nice design art in the middle segment here. There are pictures of Parker's apartment, and it says that these are.
Actually,
is this computer rendered 3-dimensional art here?
I always thought that it was an actual photograph. That's what it looked like. He says like 3-dimensional shots, so I have no clue.
It almost, I mean,
it looks too good to be computer.
Yeah, but I've played Myst, and they have some art in that game that looks like it could be like this. Those games, I should say, because there have been more than one.
Special thanks to Sky. Maybe Sky's a program.
Possibly. Or an interior designer.
But yeah, the fact that they have gone so far as to make a complete computer model of this apartment for photo reference, so that it's not just generic rooms in a generic apartment like is often been done. I dig that. And we have the backup.
Yes, we do. In this backup, written by Howard Mackey, illustrated by Andy Smith, and Brad Venkata. Brad, whatever. It's basically a story that, spoilers, Peter is telling Aunt May and Mary Jane from way back when he was a child. It's a year after the death of his parents, and basically the whole point of the story is illustrating how ostracized he felt from the children his own age, and how bad they made him feel, and how Uncle Ben pretty much made everything better, and he found Uncle Ben not as his father figure, but as his best friend, and that his Aunt May's presence made the death of his parents much easier to deal with, and they almost pretty much replaced him. So the moral of the story is that family can guide one through the dark because Uncle Ben has a flashlight.
I really liked this story until the last 3 lines of dialogue, which were absolutely terrible. But I really liked the poignancy of Peter's relationship with Uncle Ben.
I like it because the fact that we don't get a lot of Uncle Ben stories. We probably won't get a lot for things to come. This is probably like the only Uncle Ben story we'll get in the next 5 years. Not a wink wink. And I like the really
I wouldn't want to see the Peter Parker Spider-Man title, which this is. Like, I wouldn't want to see somebody writing the Peter Parker Spider-Man title doing a Peter Remembers Uncle Ben story every single issue.
Interesting bits of continuity here are that he's been living with his aunt and uncle for several years, but his parents have been only dead for 1.
I've given up trying to make sense of that because they're so inconsistent on how old he was when his parents left him and when they died.
Yeah, I felt like it's been implied that his parents handed Peter off to them and then went off in a plane and died. But I guess you could also say that they went off to start doing their missions and then died several years later.
It's impossible to reconcile because his age is so different. There's lots of times where he remembers being told when he was in a crib at one point by Uncle Ben, and then there's at one point when he found out in the Amazing Spider-Man annual with the Red Skull and his parents.
He was like a toddler. He was 2.
He was like a baby, and when Aunt May was talking about it, she was cradling Peter as she was expounding the events, and Peter was young enough that he was a baby and he couldn't even process it.
But I guess this would be a time to establish a new continuity if they're going to say how old he was now. This could be a new establishment of that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
What'd you make of the little redheaded girl? Because it's like they stopped the story dead to say, oh, she moved away a year later.
That was Mary Jane.
I think that it was supposed to be Mary Jane, and then somebody, an editor said, no, Peter doesn't meet Mary Jane till later, so, they added in that line, this girl, who, by the way, is not Mary Jane and moved away a year later.
I think it could be Mary Jane and she moved away a year later.
How would they... Sure.
Does it bother you that much? I mean, I don't think it's really important because it might be Mary Jane, and I mean, Mary Jane might not remember this.
Okay, sure.
She's younger than Peter, so her memory may not be.
It seems like a chance encounter between Peter and Mary Jane when they were kids that neither one realizes was them.
They were kids in the neighborhood that were teasing Peter earlier that day, and like she talks about how lucky Peter is for having his Uncle Ben. I think that it's something that would have, like, it doesn't bother me that much. It was just a note that I had when I first read this issue, especially because, like, the position that, like, they're in on that page versus the next page, it's almost mirroring them sitting on the couch when, like, I open up the book and I see the pages side by side.
Yeah. Why would it not be able to be Mary Jane?
If you read her origin stories and how she met Peter Parker and, like, you know, like in Untold Tales, you know, when she's remembering, like, the first time she saw Peter raking leaves, and it's this girl who moved away a year later. First of all, Mary Jane never lived at the Watson house. She didn't live at the Watson house as a child. She lived at other houses. And if Peter remembers these events, like, and he's recounting them now, then I would say that he would have remembered, you know, if that little redhead girl was Mary Jane. And I would say I don't care if Mary Jane's a year younger than Peter, she would have remembered this if that happened.
I would say that flies in the face of continuity, but I agree with Josh that if they are rebooting and giving Spider-Man a new origin on how he got his powers, they are free to go carte blanche with how Mary Jane lived and interacted with Peter before they got together. So I think it's fair game.
But the real question is, did Flash date Gwen?
We'll never get to the end of this.
Let's break out this silver spoon table diagram again.
What does it mean?
I wouldn't say that this story is as nuanced as the Gwen story that we're going to have in the next issue we're going to talk about, but I did like it. I did like the emotional beats. Until we get to, "Dear, sometimes you can see things much more clearly in the dark. Sometimes the dark brings people together in strange ways. I think you're trying to tell us something, Aunt May. Why, Peter, whatever do you mean? God, it ruins the story for me."
Explain, man.
Does he have to?
But I want to hear.
You have all these nice emotional beats. Everything is, you know, what needs to be said about the story has been said. The things that have been left unsaid, you know, but, you know, points that are there. Everything is very nice and laid out. It's a good story. And then Aunt May's back and forth with Peter absolutely takes us out of the moment and ruins it. It's stilted dialogue. It's you know, and it's just like, I hate it. I would have liked, it's been a long time since I've thought about it, Mary Jane. I guess this snowstorm killing the lights in the city triggered the memory. Maybe they needed another line after that before they could just, you know, put the end on it, but it wasn't that. That's not the line they needed with Aunt May.
Maybe someone should have, like, you know, done a cool modern 90s catchphrase, like, you know, cowabunga, or, you know, psych, or whatever, you know, and then, like, ended it with them all laughing.
Or just shouting catchphrase.
Totally. Haven't you heard that Pog is the game? Everyone knows it'll drive you insane.
Okay, we're going to put another file ending on this and come back one more time for the third and final #1 issue for November 1998. And so go look for episode 34, part 4 on the website, and we'll be back over there.
Hello.
From the creators of Toy Story
To infinity and beyond
comes an all-new motion picture event. Walt Disney Pictures presents a Pixar Animation Studios film.
No! Hurry, no! Don't look at the light! I can't help it. It's so beautiful. Out here in the field, I found for my meals. I get my back into my living.
Now let me tell you how things are supposed to work.
The ants pick the food. The grasshoppers eat the food. It's a bug-eat-bug world out there. Someone could get hurt.
He's quite the motivational speaker, isn't he? Let's ride!
It's the same year after year. They come, they eat, they leave. That's our lot in life. It's not a lot, but it's our life.
I've got an idea. We could find bigger bugs to come here and fight.
Now, why didn't I think of that? Oh, because it's suicide.
What they needed was some help.
You're perfect!
What they got
Popcorn, stale popcorn.
was a bunch of clowns.
We're losing the audience. Get out there now.
They'll only laugh at me.
That's because you're a clown.
You parasite.
Circus bugs. Hey, I thought you were warriors.
Hey, cutie! Want to pollinate with a real bug?
So, being a ladybug automatically makes me a girl. Great, she's a guy.
Come on, Francis. You're making the maggots cry.
Walt Disney Pictures presents
I'm desperate. I couldn't
a
tell.
Pixar Animation Studios film.
This was not supposed to happen.
Squish 'em.
Run for your life.
An epic
I think I'm going to vet myself.
Okay.
of miniature proportion.
We don't serve grasshoppers. For the colony and for oppressed bugs everywhere.
Hello there, girly bug.
Shoo fly, don't bother me.
A Bug's Life. Coming to theaters this Thanksgiving.
Hey, turn your butt off.
And now, leading us into Webspinners, Tales of Spider-Man #1, released on November 25th, right before Thanksgiving. Josh Bertoni, take us away.
This will be good.
Haven't you heard that podcast of the game? Everyone knows it'll drive you insane. Okay. Well, the cover, Webspinners, Tales of Spider-Man. We have first spectacular issue and a big logo. We got the Comics Code Authority bars, so we know that the Comics Code approved this thing, although their standards have kind of, not been as strict as they used to be. And what I find is cool that they've been doing lately, above the barcode, it says www.marvel.com. So, have you guys been to marvel.com? You could read, cyber comics there and stuff.
I actually haven't been there very much. I don't really go online very often, except to go on AOL and talk to people.
There's cool games and stuff. Like during the Spider Hunt storyline I was telling you about before, you could play a game on Marvel.com where you have a crosshairs and you try and shoot little Spider-Mans. You're playing as a bounty hunter, so it's pretty cool. So Spider-Man's on some rock formations, and Mysterio with two demons is standing over him, and it says featuring the monstrous menace of Mysterio. We open up with the paper with the anti-exposition, gatefolds, which tells us all about the different Spider-Man characters. Spotlighted this time are Mysterio, Aunt May, J. Jonah Jameson, Flash Thompson, and Gwen Stacy.
Well, I thought Gwen Stacy was dead.
Well,
she is currently a student at Empire State University who has had a romantic attachment to Peter Parker.
We get a recap thing that talks about Mysterio's past encounters, but then we jump right into the story, which starts off with the final scenes of Just a Guy Named Joe, a story that we love so much and so classic that it just had to be retold, only without the Ditko artwork, which was one of its only redeeming factors. So that's awesome. We get to relive those pages again.
They also recap his origin. The puddle turned Joe into a superpowered nut job.
Because that made sense and that was so awesome. We end the issue 38 stuff. Oddly enough, it's almost like, word for word, but they leave out the whole thing where, Mary Jane with her big boobs and short hair, leaves the Parker house in her car and Peter thinks it's Betty. But we end the usual with Peter going upstairs, with his, no, I only get nightmares when I'm awake. And then all of a sudden, the narration, without warning, switches from third person to first person, as Peter says, like Ferris Bueller or Kevin Arnold style, okay, I admit it was a little melodramatic, but at that age, the whole world is charged with melodrama. And considering what happened not long afterwards, I wasn't far from wrong. So without knowing why the narrative's changed, we go to the title page, which has a big tombstone that says, "Here lies J. Jonah Jameson," and the title's called "As Dreams Are Made." And this story, is part 1 of Webspinners, and it's by John Mark DeMatteis, who's awesome. And the art's by Michael Zoli, who, as I get into in this recap, is not so awesome.
Not at all.
No.
For real. So Peter pulls back and tells us how he's going to be narrating this thing. That's right, I said I wasn't far from wrong. Me, Peter Parker.
Talking to the camera.
Yeah, I thought that I hope that at the end of this arc they reveal that he's been talking to somebody, but like, you know, I've used a Ouija board to communicate with somebody from 3 months now, and that person says that no, it's Peter talking to the camera.
And Peter Parker is a woman, as you can tell in that second panel.
Yes, lots of people are genderly confused in this issue.
Genderly confused.
I was going to try and pull the whole thing up by playing the
omniscient
narrator, but talking to myself in the third person was getting kind of weird, because this isn't. So if you don't mind, I'll just tell you the story same way I tell an old friend. And we all friends, aren't we? And again, when he's saying this, I thought it was going to reveal he was talking to Matt Murdock or Mary Jane or something. But he wasn't. So we get this weird narration thing. That's awesome. So he takes us up to his attic. I put down to his basement before I realized it was his attic. He takes us up to his attic, where days after the Joe incident, he's wearing glasses for some reason, because it's a flashback. And whenever they flash back to the Ditko days, they always put Peter in glasses, regardless of when the flashback is taking place, because hey, Peter wore glasses in like old stories, right? So this is a flashback, so put him in glasses.
I didn't even notice the glasses whenever I was taking my notes on this. Yeah, he hasn't had glasses for 5 months at this point.
Well,
no, wait.
5 months?
That was the first Mysterio story. No, this is... Yeah, 30 issues.
3 years.
3 years, 2.5 years of no glasses at this point.
Well, maybe his glasses are the reason why he screwed up his science, because he tries to make some science in the attic of Angst and Science, because he's not in the room of Angst and Science, but he's too distracted by the floating heads of guilt, and the science explodes in his face.
And causes his face to constantly mutate throughout this issue, so that he never looks the same, like the same person in more than one panel.
Yeah, no.
Along with the rest of the world.
Even the glasses look different.
Yeah. So tension arrives in the form of Aunt May, and let me read what Peter says in his first-person narration, which is still weird. I was certain that she'd come bursting into the room, see the web fluid splattered everywhere, shout, "Merciful heavens, my nephew's Spider-Man!" and then kneel over and collapse, dead on the floor from shock. Which I actually thought that was funny, you know.
That was funny.
Like, looking back at his paranoia. Aunt May doesn't have a heart attack and die on the floor, but instead panics about how this child's chemistry set that's only $20 could have murdered Peter, and he must either go to the ER or take a bath.
He's not in high school anymore.
Those are your two options.
Yeah, she's like, you must go to the ER. No. Oh, well, then take a bath. I'll get it ready for you. No, this is the worst Aunt May. And
go to the emergency room or wash.
One of the two, because this child's chemistry set almost killed you. And it's like Back to the Future, the beginning of like the first movie. Like, it's this little dinky thing, but he flies across the room and explodes, just like Marty McFly with the big amplifiers. Like, anyway, Quentin Beck, who looks like a cross between Gwen Stacy and Aunt May in one of the panels, actually.
I know which panel you're talking about.
Is on the phone in a hotel room trying to line up a job, but for some reason people see him as unreliable. Could it be because he joined the Sinister Six and went to jail? I don't know. But he angst in the hotel room for a few panels, and like, I'm not.
They didn't even mention the Sinister Six in this story, but yeah, that was definitely there.
And when I say he angst in the hotel, that's really what he does. Like, he slams things around. Like, there's a panel where he's like at the window and he has his fists clenched, you know. So he's angsting, you know, because whatever. So that goes to his childhood home, where a woman who, by the way, this woman that answered the door at his childhood home, it took me a few panels to realize that it was in fact a woman, because I thought it was a man.
Yeah, when she opens the door in that top row of panels, it's totally a dude.
Yes! And I read it as dude, and then, it pulls back.
And it looks like a tall man, too, because, like, we're in the camera looking up at her.
Oh, this art! And by the way, this is still being narrated by Peter Parker at this point as he's saying what Quinn and Beck does, which makes it even more awkward. So Quinn and Beck, goes to, the room in his old home because he's feeling sentimental, and he gets flashbacks about, playing with little movie toys, and his dad comes in. Look, Pop, look what I did. Made them all by myself. And I'm filming them, Pop, frame by frame. I'm like Willis O'Brien and Ray Harrison. I'm going to be a famous special effects guy, too. One day, Pop. Oh, okay, so this is a flashback, and he's, telling his father, and he's in, an old rundown home, and it's a flashback, and he's telling his father about his career choice. I bet you that his father is going to be totally supportive of this,
Because you can tell by the suspenders and wife beater.
And just by the way that the scene starts off, whenever there's a flashback of a child proudly telling their dad what they're going to be when they grow up, the dad is always supportive.
Because this is the supervillain origin, and supervillains always have good parents.
Would I do to end up with a nitwit like this for a kid? Can you tell me that, Henrietta? And then Peter Parker tells us, from the future, that what Quinn and Beck is flashbacking about. Elmer Beck had a habit of ignoring his son and talking directly to his late wife, a habit that made Quinn and Beck feel just as dead as his mother, and even more invisible.
Peter Parker, how does he know that?
Because he's reading it from a book, which we'll get to later. So surprises of surprises, Quinn and Beck's father is not supportive of his career choice and knocks over his stuff. It's really sad. Floyd. Yeah. So as Quinn and Beck leaves, in this flashback within a flashback, we're now back to the first flashback, not the flashback within the flashback. Quinn and Beck's an adult, in case you can't keep track. He walks by a woman named Betsy, who, by the way, her name has come up in Peter's narration a lot. She was a childhood friend of Quinn and Beck's who recognizes him and starts to reminisce until Quinn and Beck disappears on her. Aunt May and Peter have a sentimental moment at breakfast, which Aunt May then ruins by... And this is I've read Spider-Man for years. This is one of the worst Aunt May moments ever. Aunt May ruins by saying that Peter will get blisters if he eats popcorn.
Wait. And
if you're later than Tenet, the bottom panel on that page. Don't forget a jacket, it's chilly out, typical Aunt May. And if you're going to be out later than 10 o'clock, call me. You know how I worry. And don't eat that salty popcorn. It gives you blisters in your mouth.
No. Okay. All right.
He's a freshman in college, and she's telling me.
The bathroom is now broken. I understand that JMD is going for the time period, and granted, Stan Lee did make Aunt May incredibly insufferable by issue 12, but still, man.
Just for the record, that I created the universe story up there is by Stan Lee. You can see that the first initial S in the name Lieber, but the story doesn't exist.
Stanley Martin Lieber, yeah.
Yeah, I looked it up. The story doesn't exist. It's a fictitious story.
It looks like an amazing adult fantasy kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Which is cool.
So Peter goes to this theater. While outside the theater, three people walk by who Peter says are Flash, Gwen, and Harry, but the art makes them look like imposters. Harry and Flash are excited about an ESU football game that Flash just won, and Gwen, who's not quite the sports fan that she was in Amazing Spider-Man issue 31, is easily distracted by animals. They're like, football, 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 and Gwen's like, ooh, nice puppy.
It's very Homer Simpson-esque of her.
Yeah, we'll get to Gwen and her love of animals and all things pure in the backup story.
I cannot wait for it. I am eagerly anticipating that.
And how she, fed the starving children of Malaysia. Peter decides that he'd rather risk his identity by sticking to the wall in plain sight than having these Flash, Harry, and Gwen imposters walk by him. And, so he forgoes the obligatory ESU gang, gets mad at Peter's scene, and sticks to the wall. Peter and Beck are the only ones in the theater, at least that's the way that the art makes it seem, and they start to bond over their love of special effects, and Peter not recognizing Quinn and Beck, who he's seen unmasked before. But then things get kind of awkward when Beck's like, yeah, my dad used to abuse me because of this. Oh, you didn't have an abusive father too? Oh, this is awkward. It doesn't quite go down like that, but that's like the gist of it. So for some reason, future Peter's narration doesn't actually seem to acknowledge that this was Quinn and Beck. And
Yeah, because like he's omniscient about everything else in the story except for the fact that he secretly ran into Mysterio right here.
yeah. And I guess I'm getting good at reading this artwork because I realized that it was Quinn and Beck. And then
I didn't at first, actually.
yeah. And then Quinn and Beck and Betsy angst about wanting to be with each other, but how they're not going to be with each other, separately. Like, she's at the window like, oh, Quinn and Beck, how I'd long to be with him, but I can't. And Quinn and Beck's outside the window, oh, Betsy, how I'd long to talk to her, but I mustn't.
And her hair is 3 different colors in that page.
Carly
It's
Cooper take
green,
notes.
and then it's gray, and then it's red.
And it's not the lighting. It's literally like she almost looks like a Doug Funny character. Like she has like purple skin when she has green hair.
Oh
The
my
gray
God.
I could see as lighting, but it's green in another panel, and I just don't get that.
And it's auburn in the last panel.
Right.
Oh, consistency in this art. Isn't that awesome? Except when it's not.
And there's one panel in the theater where where Quentin Beck looks like the deformed guy from the Goonies. I mean, he's got one, or the Toxic Avenger. He looks like the Toxic Avenger, where he's got one big pop eye and another eye that's like lower down and smaller. The art is terrible. Okay, continue.
Ugh.
So Spidey goes to tease Jonah, in his office, who kind of has it coming this time. Spider-Man's not just doing it randomly, because Jonah is apparently in the middle of a 100-part series on why Spider-Man stinks. Which, where's Captain America during this, with the rest of the This time, Jonah's gone too far. Jonah is, like, standing on top of his desk, like, shouting from the heavens, and he almost falls off, but Spider-Man decides not to let him break his neck, which is actually what he says, like, I can't let Jonah break his neck. Which is good, because Spider-Man would never let a member of his supporting cast fall and break their neck. That would,
At least not purposefully.
Jonah screams to call his wife, but out of the 2 wives that he has, one of them is dead, and the other one hasn't been introduced yet. So...
Yeah. I made a note about that, too. Oh, my goodness. Miter span.
Peter comes home, and Aunt May, is in top form, and she's watching TV, and it's the news. And apparently, J. Jonah Jameson has been found dead. A 10-year-old, from their window, used a camcorder to film J. Jonah Jameson getting in a car crash because a masked man jumped in front of Jonah's car, causing it to swerve. And the masked man was identified as Spider-Man. Peter, remembering Mysterio, the Chameleon, and all the other times that this happened, comes to the only logical conclusion that he can. Oh my gosh, could this possibly be me?
Mm-hmm.
And
Go, John, go.
what the hell is up with Peter's face?
Yeah.
Whenever Aunt May's "and to meet his end in such a grisly way at the hands of Spider-Man," he looks like a freaking Play-Doh doll.
He looks like Shia LaBeouf, and if Shia LaBeouf got into like a Luke Skywalker-esque car accident.
And then, and if we go back 2 pages to whenever he's watching the Moot TV with Aunt May, that doesn't even look like Peter, like at all. That
his eyes like falling out of his socket.
And the hair is all wrong. It's just, oh my. The costume art in this is a bit closer to passable than any of the human being art. The human being art in this issue is abso-freaking-lutely terrible. The costume art is at least close to passable.
If anything, it looks as close to that Bill Sienkiewicz Sabit Sema stuff from the Clone Saga, but even that you could tell sort of what the characters were supposed to look like. This is so inconsistent and so muddy.
You can't tell the gender of some characters.
Or the fact that they're the same person from panel to panel.
So in one of the only redeeming sequences of this god-awful, A story, Jonah, or so it, is going towards heaven, which we know from reading, the current 1998 books that Jonah's still alive. And, they reveal a few pages later that, this is Mysterio's machination. So Jonah's going towards heaven. And he's like, yes, heaven. Then they do like a big 90s psych. They don't actually say psych, but that's what I think when I read stuff like this, psych. And then he lands smack down in the middle of a hot lava, rock,
That was a funny page.
Yes. And then they ended on a laugh. Jonah's like, I want my lawyer. No problem. He's scheduled to join you in another 2 years. 2 years? I can't wait that long. Then Peter, narrating from the future, And to tell you the truth, once I figured out what was going on, it was fun at first. But that was before things turned ugly, not just for Spider-Man, but for Betty Schneider and all of New York City. And I'll be sure to give you the down and dirty details next time. End part 1.
After this commercial break.
Yeah. I'm glad that we can all agree that this sucks and I don't have to talk you into it.
I like it.
Shut up!
No, I don't like it. I just want to give you a heart attack.
There are parts of DeMatteis's writing in this story that I like. The art spoils the whole thing. The fact that Peter is narrating all of this omnisciently spoils the whole thing. But there are parts of the actual story and the way it goes that I kind of am curious about, with Quentin Beck trying to get a job and angsting about his childhood and giving us some little bit of insight into his life. The fact that he decides to send Jonah Jameson, to become Spider-Man again, because he realizes this is the only thing that he's ever done that actually he was good at, or something like that. I forget exactly how that logic went. He goes to be a fake Spider-Man again, to send Jonah Jameson into a fake hell. Those are some kind of cool story beats. Whenever he sees the girl of his childhood and he's still too introverted to actually talk to her, and he walks away while she's in the middle of a sentence, there's stuff about the story that I liked, but overall it's really, really hard to get through.
It's too text heavy, and when there's not text, there's just like very, very, very bad rendering. I mean, there is a difference between preferences of style and technical artists, and if you cannot tell what's going on, then by definition you are a bad technical artist. And there's expressionism in art, and then there's comic book storytelling. And if you can't tell when someone's male or female, or who someone is, or if someone is dying or not, then by definition, I'm sorry, Mr.
8-year-old Scribble Scrabble.
I mean,
Mr.
you're
Sully.
9 years old, Don, and I'm pretty sure that you could do better than this.
Yeah, I've been practicing in my art class.
One of the other little things that I liked, and this would have been from DeMatteis, I'm pretty sure that he would have written this. It wasn't just a Zully thing. Although if it was a Zully thing, then yay for him for being clever. Whenever Spider-Man swings past the J. Jonah Jameson billboard, Spider-Man Hero or Menace, this week part 24 of a 300-part series, a year-long expose, and you can just tell that it's just 300 pointless rants about Spider-Man being evil. It's not actually a structured, built series. It's just rant after rant after rant after rant.
I do like...
No. He has this thing, like, outlined in his office. Like, it's 300 parts, and they're all essential. And it's an intricate build-up, that, yeah. I know.
Yeah, no.
I do like the image on that billboard, though. That's actually probably the only good image in the entire A story. Of Jameson's,
the bit with the secretary and him and he and she, how they both hate Spider-Man, and the tying into the fact that Betty Brant's gone missing here. I liked that bit. But there's so much fail that just makes the good parts seem trivial.
Look at Peter Parker on that next page.
I don't want to look at Peter Parker on this book ever again.
Okay, so J.M. DeMatteis, he's one of my favorite Spider-Man writers. He did one of my favorite Spider-Man runs. Heck, he's done a few of my favorite Spider-Man runs. I mean, but this story is not only hurt by the art, but by the narrative device. He was trying something different. I get that, but the whole Peter Parker not only talking from the future, but talking to the reader from the future, it makes things hecka confusing. And before he switches the narrative, it makes it make less sense. And that was definitely a problem, at least for me.
I should have stuck with a third person, less heavily narrated version of this story.
Yes.
Don't make Peter talk to the camera. Hire an artist who can draw a consistent design. There's a good story here. That's the thing. There's a good story here that is being told very badly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good story, but there are some moments in there that still, like, okay, honestly, the whole, like, villain telling their dad what they want to be when they grow up and then getting, like, their dreams wrecked, that is a cliche.
Yeah, and that is a cliche of DeMatteis.
Yeah, I was going to say, DeMatteis does that.
Every villain he's touched, from Harry Osborn to Dr. Octopus to Mysterio, they all have abusive childhoods. And while I understand that's a very good trope for storytelling and a very real thing going on in reality, when you do it with the supervillains and rely on that trope, every single time, it's like Paul Jenkins with Uncle Ben. It becomes redundant and it loses its effectiveness.
Who's Paul Jenkins?
Never mind.
I mean, if I were to,
he's wearing a Halloween costume of like abusive father.
I just if John Mark dealt with that in his own childhood, and wants to bring that to his writing, I understand that completely and totally understand that, can relate to that, but it is done a lot.
You need to consider your audience,
and it is a DeMatteis thing. It's like if you wanted to make every superheroine or supervillainess have to go through rape as a young woman and make that part of their reason for being. That's the sort of thing that I could conceive being done too much.
What's rape? Never mind. It's probably not good.
I'll tell you when you're older, little Donovan.
Oh, moments like Gwen saying "nice puppy" and whatever, like, which I guess that's supposed to communicate that she's not that involved in Flash's story, but like in the context of how it comes off in the script, it comes off as random. And all in all, this was trying to capture a period of Spider-Man, and I don't think it captured that period.
I think it actually captured it kind of wrongly, because personally, the way I would read the pre-issue 40 Harry, Gwen, Flash triangle, I would have put Gwen next to Flash.
Well, not only that, but like because of the art, it makes it seem like a very, very like ugly era. Honestly, it does. And even though Ditko was as less clear of an artist as Romita, it was still like a very positive looking book.
It really does look like there's sleazy people walking through a sleazy part of town.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Gwen does not. I mean, Gwen Stacy, from day one until the day that she fell off the bridge, and every day after that, Gwen Stacy was a sexually attractive figure. She was never depicted as being unattractive. What is that walking along there? I mean, she's frumpy, which is not to make frumpy girls feel bad. It's just that's if you're going to depict Gwen Stacy, that's not how you depict Gwen Stacy.
Look at the next page right after the story ends to look how you depict Gwen Stacy. Damn it!
And is that supposed to be Harry Osborn?
Yeah,
I
he's
can't
taller
tell.
than Flash.
And that doesn't look like Flash either. Like you said, those are their stunt doubles.
You idiots! These are not them. You've captured their stunt doubles.
Flash Thompson looks like Foggy Nelson.
Yes, he does. And Harry Osborn looks like Tony Stark without the goatee.
Those are like the original Matt Groening designs, as opposed to the refined Matt Groening designs of the characters, where they looked really, really like odd and just like stretched out like bubblegum.
And Peter looks like he's getting a ticket to a porn theater.
Yeah, and then like that whole like scene with him and Mysterio, they might as well be watching the porn movie with like the uncomfortable body language and the so. Oh, you mean your dad didn't abuse you either? Oh, that's awkward.
Your uncle was into this?
And Peter is an idiot. Oh my God, did I do this? It was not the chameleon impersonating me again. Or, no, at this point, Craven's impersonated him at this point.
And I made that joke in, was it Amazing?
It must have been, because that's the only book that we've covered, aside from...
I made that joke about him seeing Spider-Man doing something on the news and thinking that, he was having a mental breakdown, because that's such a laughable story trope to take after it's done once in issue 13. He learns his lesson and he moves on because that's what people do.
Oh, in issue 1 he was impersonated.
Yeah, that's true.
Did I commit the act of murder? Did I black out and murder a guy? Oh my God, Peter, this is really, really dark.
The only other two things I have to say about this is that there's a nice Saul Brodsky reference.
Yes.
On the panel, on the Gwen Stacy page.
The not Gwen Stacy page.
It was in the ugly panel.
Maybe it was the Brodsky Theater. I can't see it now, but that's okay. And then there's a Titanic reference. To the movie Titanic.
Oh, I'm so over that movie. That movie's over a year old, and it's...
Yeah, but it's still in theaters. I mean,
making a lot of money, dude.
No!
It's still in theaters, and they're still playing the stupid song over and over and over again. Back then, wearing the webs was like, and I hope James Cameron will excuse me as he's writing a movie adaptation of my character being king of the world.
It was a good movie. The first time I saw it, it was a little long, but I'm over it now. Titanic needs to, sink and stay at the bottom of the ocean for a long freaking time.
It did.
It needs to stay there.
Okay, have we ripped enough assholes in this story? Do we need to?
I think we have.
Okay, should we move on to the much better portion of the book?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we get some better art here. It says Stanley presents
Some
the
better
Kiss.
art.
Yeah, by John Mark DeMatteis again. This time, he's joined by a competent artist
By
called John
competent,
Romita.
we mean one of the art gods of comics.
Yeah, by John Romita Sr. And Peter's looking through a photo album to remind himself what his supporting cast looks like after that god-awful story, the previous, portion of the book.
He's not looking at the reader either.
Yeah, he's not talking. He is talking to someone, but he doesn't pull out "Hi, I'm Peter Parker. Let me tell you about the crazy day I had." No. It's
Exactly.
no. He looks at Gwen in this photo album, who looks exactly like Gwen. Flash Thompson's there, and wouldn't you know it, he looks like Flash Thompson. Harry Osborn's there, in his Harry Osborn Halloween costume with the bow tie and the suit that he didn't really wear that much in the Romita era, but gosh darn it, every flashback to the Romita era, even the ones drawn by Romita, depict him in it.
Like this one.
Like this one. So this story's called The Kiss. Remember that story where Mary Jane's like, I remember Gwen from the 90s and about
Yes,
how
I do.
awesome. Yeah. And this is just like that, except it's from Peter's point of view.
From the 90s, you mean like a few years ago, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, we're still in the 90s. So
yeah, dude,
Peter
we are still in the 90s. I mean, the new millennium, you will know when it gets here.
So Peter, is walking to Gwen's house, and as he's walking, the flowers come to life and start singing a song about how awesome the air smells and how awesome the day is. And Peter, taps his toes as if he's walking on air. Gwen answers the door, and as Peter says, she's never looked more perfect. Peter then goes on to say about how Gwen is perfect and Gwen is perfect. Peter looks at Gwen's perfect house and how clean it is and how awesome it is. And a bluebird flies in the window on his hand and starts singing a song. That really doesn't happen, but I feel like it's going to.
It's like a spadoinkle day.
The sky is blue and all the leaves are green. The sun's as warm as a baked potato. I think I know precisely what I mean when I say it's a spadoinkle day.
Yeah. He looks at the picture of Captain Stacy, and Gwen comes down, and Gwen doesn't have to say anything to him because, let me read this. When Gwen came back down into the room, when she saw the expression on my face, she didn't say anything. She didn't have to. With us, words didn't matter. Okay, John Mark DeMatteis, good writer, and I feel bad for crapping on both of his stories, but did you read any stories about
Okay, this is where I gotta step in. I really, really do. Throughout the first page of this, and some parts throughout this, a lot of times Peter says, he points out that these aren't exactly he's probably romanticizing the memory of Gwen, but this is just an account they had that upon years after the fact of her death, he's looked back at with fondness because it was the last time they really had a solo date before she died. So he's had a real fondness for the memory of that night and just being there together. And he mentions it several times. Maybe it didn't happen this way. Maybe I'm taking too much into it, but it doesn't matter because it's how I choose to remember it. So as fun as it is, you kind of,
because that's how he chooses to remember it.
So we have an idealized version through Peter's rose-covered glasses of how this night went.
Well, I'll continue because this is because this isn't over because this happens a few more times. So they go to the movies, and Gwen's perfume is so awesome. Except Peter remembers that maybe she didn't actually, wear perfume, and Peter and Gwen hold hands, and the way that she holds his hand is so perfect because everything about them is perfect. Gwen wants to walk in the rain, but Peter thinks, no, that's silly, we'll get wet. So then Gwen gets mad. So then they go to the coffee bean because during every issue of the Silver Age, everyone always went to the coffee bean, don't you know? They always went to the coffee bean, and everyone was always there, right? Isn't that how it happened?
I thought it was a silver spoon.
So,
and as far as our reading,
and Harry Osborn's playing Tatanka.
So because Gwen is so awesome, everyone at the Coffee Bean is trying to cheer her up, from Mary Jane to Harry to Flash, who are all drawn at their Ramita finest, but like almost caricatures of like what people remember them looking like in the Silver Age. And everyone's trying to cheer up so much that it gets to the point where Flash, Harry, and Mary Jane put on like a miniature play for Gwen with the purpose of cheering her up. And I'm not exaggerating. Look at the art. Read the dialogue. They put on like a miniature play for the purpose of entertaining the dear perfect Gwen, who knows how to hold hands so well, has the perfect perfume and the perfect everything, and is, purity like, signified. And by the way, there's my second. While this is happening, Peter is comparing Gwen to Mary Jane, not in the past, but in the present as he's recounting this. And he talks about how Mary Jane hid things, and with Gwen, there was nothing hidden.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, which that line broke me because
everything broke you with this fucking issue.
With Gwen, and yes, I know this is Peter idealizing everything, but with Gwen, there's nothing hidden. Like going to a space exhibit, following Peter around. Why isn't he talking to me? Like her first dozen appearances, and you know what? Maybe that stopped after Ditko left the book, or maybe no, it didn't. Because when Gwen went to London and she wanted Peter to propose to her, did she say, "Peter, I'm going to London. Propose to me so I can stay"? No. She played head games with him. That's all they did to each other. They played head games with each other. It wasn't Betty Brant level head games, but head games all the same. And she never said what was on her mind to him. It was always manipulative. But with Gwen, there was nothing. There was nothing hidden. So the gang puts on the plane for Gwen to cheer up, but it doesn't work. So Peter, because this is the most romantic night ever in the history of romance, and Gwen's so perfect, they go on a horse carriage in the park, and they kiss. And it's the best kiss in the whole wide world. Why it lasts for a century?
It's so amazing that it gives them flash forwards.
Yes. And then he's back in the present looking at this, John Romita, senior art book that he has. And Mary Jane walks in.
Don't forget the jazz after because
So Mary Jane walks in, and instead of thinking about how awesome his current wife is, the girl that he's kissing and presumably about to make nookie with right now, he thinks how if it wasn't for Gwen, why, Gwen is so perfect that if it wasn't for Gwen, he and Mary Jane would probably not be making out right now. Because if he and Gwen had never had that kiss that lasted for centuries, he never would have been brave enough to date Mary Jane later on.
And he knows that Gwen is happy that he's getting it on with another woman right now.
Because Gwen is staring at them watching them have sex.
Gwen is watching them have sex.
The picture is like her, like correction, I don't think that she's happy right now. I know it. And she's staring at them from the picture book.
Oh, yeah. No, it ends. Like, Gwen's, like, picture, like, the way that it is, like, it's as if she's, like, watching Peter and Mary Jane, like, smiling from this John Romita Sr. art book. Like, yep.
And then she slowly morphs into Aunt May.
And Stacy's picture is just kind of creepy right there, staring at you going, why are they having sex? I'm here too.
Yeah, and then... Yeah, and then Gwen's heavenly angel comes down and cures all diseases, and everyone holds hands and sings a little song, and Norman Osborn is about to, snap the neck of, of some innocent poor person, and Gwen goes up to him, touches his forehead, and then Norman hugs the person, and then Flash is about to say puny Parker, Gwen touches his forehead, and Flash donates all his money to charity, and Jonah is about to, write a nasty article about Spider-Man. Gwen walks by him, taps him on the head, and Jonah does an article, about like Spider-Man's good deeds to the world, and they all march happily and skip, and the book ends.
And Felicia becomes a nun.
and Felicia becomes a nun, Sgt. Pepper, 1970s movie style.
Okay, can I go?
Go. I'm good if you're good.
Let me tell you how Josh is wrong on everything. Because as much as I've enjoyed his blood-fueled rants, I gotta say, to put them into perspective, basically Josh's big issue, unless I miss my guess, is that this book is a humongous flannerization of the Gwen Stacy character.
It's a flannerization of Gwen Stacy and of the Romita age in general.
Okay, here's the thing.
What's flanderization? Because TV tropes doesn't exist.
It's an exaggeration of the era, and
it's a word that he just coined, about how The Simpsons has been treating Ned Flanders over the last few years, because the show's been on for 6 or 7 or 8 years now, and Flanders
it's in its ninth season.
Okay, so
they just had the Poochie episode.
Donovan has just coined a phrase.
Yeah, take that, internet, if you last much longer. But my thing is that Josh, from what I obviously gather, is like he's saying that this is an over exaggeration and an oversimplification of an era that people love to remember. My thing is that not to speak as though Josh isn't here, but it seems to me though that Josh is seriously jaded because there has been so many references to this era that have been idealized that whenever they go back to this era and they portray it in this way, that it's just hard to stomach because it wasn't that every issue. But the thing about this issue is not only does Peter make a point that says maybe I'm romanticizing this too much, it's almost a metatextual look back on the immediate era, because many times does Peter say that maybe it's just my preference to remember Gwen this way and she wasn't really like this, and there are no words. This whole thing is told by John Romita. There are just captions that sort of give a story, but it's really, this issue is told by John Romita and JMD does the wraparound. So we get the status quo of what was then, and you can't deny that at one point or another, this was the status quo, essentially. And now I'm not saying that Gwen was ever this virginal angel that she was back then, but the story isn't much about how awesome Gwen is. It's about how much in love Peter and Gwen were in, and that you really can't deny. So since that is the crux of the story, and how that has shaped Peter since then, and how that has shaped Peter's worldview on how his life was since then, I think this is a perfect story, especially with the art.
I heartfeltly, if that's a word, enjoyed Bertoni's parody of this story. But the way I read it, I kind of come down on Dawn's side. I really, really liked it. I liked the emotional beats. I liked that this was basically a love letter to Peter's and Gwen's relationship.
You can't deny that they were seriously. I mean, he even says, if she had lived, would we have still been together? Or would we have found other people? I mean, he's very realistic about it. He's not.
What if they did a story like this about Betty Brant and Peter's relationship, and in the story, Peter said things like, "That was when Liz Allen poked me on the shoulder and walked away, but Betty didn't get jealous. Betty would never get jealous over things like that."
Well, it doesn't matter because that relationship didn't end up that way. Because Gwen died, there's always the what if factor, which this issue plays on, with this being the last issue. It's a different situation.
And there are always unanswered questions, and yeah, he is romantic. In fact, if I have anything bad to say about this, it's the fact that he over makes the point that he's idealizing his memories here.
I don't think he does. I think that it's done right when it gets too saccharine and too sweet. I think that he steps back into reality and says, well, maybe it wasn't that way.
But I think that he pulls us out of the moment a bit too often, in my opinion, that he doesn't need to state so much that he's idealizing it. Okay, we get you're idealizing it. Let's go on with the idealized version since that's where we are. That's probably the only thing I would have negative to say about the story. Yes, Gwen Stacy's and Peter's relationship was not this cool for any length of time. But there were times where they were this good. And maybe it was only an issue. Maybe it was only the space between one issue and the next. But there were times where Peter and Gwen Stacy would meet up, and it was the happiest part of both of their days.
Yeah.
That did happen. And I think that's what he's looking back at. He's not looking back at her.
This happened every single time.
Right. He's not looking back at wondering why Gwen Stacy would shun him for working for Spider-Man. He's not looking back at, the bad times
not being there when she was in the hospital. She's not looking back at, him being missing. She's not looking back at him being mad at her because he thinks she's with her. She's not looking back at the continuity lace issues that writers lovingly forget. He's looking back at what matters to him. And what matters to him is what happens to matter to writers and artists who tend to over-romanticize this. But because this is the character, it works.
And this is just one night. This is not the overall nature of their relationship. He's looking back at a night, one particular night. And they I fully believe they had nights like this in, the fictitious world that doesn't exist. I fully believe that these sorts of evenings did happen where things were nice and they were in love. And for Peter, at least, she was the perfect girl.
At that point in time. I mean, he wanted to marry her.
He did. He wanted to marry her, and they said in the books the reason we killed her off is because we didn't want them to get married. That was the only other place we could go. Is their relationship was going towards marriage, and we didn't want Peter to get married, so we killed her.
Which is happening anyway.
So, I totally get your view on it, Josh. I totally understand it, and especially knowing the way you like to look at the comics and like to look at the relationships. I'm not saying your point of view is wrong or anything by any stretch of the imagination. I read it very differently when I read it.
It's not a bad story. I just don't like points that the story makes. The art is very good, and this is a more well-told story than the previous story this issue was. It's just...
This is the best story out of every issue we've read tonight.
My problem is, like, it to me, it's over-idealized, and to me, this has become, like... It's almost its legacy that I have the problem with. The legacy, in the few days... that this book has been out, because I'm talking about this story's legacy. In the few days that this story's been out, Don made reference to a trade earlier, a trade that also came out in those few days. This story has, like, it's become, like, what people associate with the Romita era in general, and, like, this just totally fictitious idea of, like, it was always the gang hanging out at the Coffee Bean, and, this and that, and, Gwen is just, and it's just, added to the myth of Gwen Stacy. Remember that as this idealized being, Norman Osborn indiscretion aside, which,
There's no such thing.
I can't say that. Gwen Stacy as this idealized human being, and even if they were to do a story, years from now about Gwen having an indiscretion, and having kids with another person, which that would be weird. But if they ever decide to do that, like this story and this perception of Gwen is still out there. That like that she always like had a halo. Like they don't remember Gwen like, saying the Peter and her thought balloons, propose to me, damn it, while she's hugging him, saying, oh, Peter, I'm going to leave because no one's asking me to stay.
Well, I will say that if there's one thing that sums up this whole thing and your perspective, is that panel where that panel right before the Death of Gwen Stacy panel, where she's looking in Peter's eyes, and it's very, very romance comics era Romita, where she has this look in her eyes. He says, I found the entire universe in her eyes. That is definitely the point that everybody who thinks of Gwen Stacy thinks of her in that image. But again, I will say, and I don't want to come off as that, we're right and you're wrong. I don't, because your opinion is great. But I will say that as much as you can take away that this is a gift and a curse towards Spider-Man legacy, about how people look back on issues they probably never read. Remember, this is Peter Parker's perspective. And Peter Parker's perspective is the would-be widower of a woman who he was mad in love with when she died by somebody who A, he tried to save, and B, was the worst enemy he had at that time. It was the worst thing that had happened to him at that point in life. So he can't help but remember what was really a really good relationship to him at his point in time when he was very young. So it's as idealized as it can be. It just makes sense for the character, and if it were any other way, it would almost fly in the face of those issues, as it would almost be out of continuity with those issues if he were to like say, well, Gwen was great, but she always was a bitch to here and here and here, or she always was a witch here and here.
Okay, yeah, but it's one extreme or the other. It doesn't have to be either him saying she was a witch, and oh, she was perfect. But I get you notice, by the way, that like, after they get ready for their date, she's pretty much wearing the Gwen Stacy Halloween costume that she's always drawn in.
This
like
is true.
Since, which is again another thing about the story. It's like the Silver Age, like it basically boils down to like, the same outfits for certain characters, the same setting. It's always the coffee bean. It's always Harry in the green suit and the bow tie. It's always Gwen in the outfit that it's always the outfit that Gwen only wore like the issue that she died in. Like it's always those things.
It is, but at the same time, I mean, is that her fault? for choosing. I mean,
it's not her fault, but it would be like boiling the '90s down to just like one story. Like it was always Mary Jane in that bikini that she was, wearing when she called Peter. It was always Aunt May, not knowing how to use a pager. It was always like.
Well, again, I mean, it's the right. I mean, if they were ever to do like, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, like a DC retrospective thing, and had like decades where like they take writers from those decades, and if, for instance, if they had what they're having now, or at least they had a couple of years ago with like the Alan Grant and Norm Brayfogle Batman era, and they made something like that, it wouldn't be that issue every single issue, but it would be representative of the era and the mindset. I mean, that's sort of like what this is, and like. Again, I mean, I just got to fall on it's people who tend to write this as every issue, but this issue isn't trying to be every issue. This isn't like there were 2 years ago. Do you remember that annual, that 96 annual?
That was another, which I thought that was a better representation of an era, but it also had Harry in his Halloween costume. But it's
that one was mainly, it was told to be a continuity piece because you found out how Captain Stacy found out Spider-Man was Peter Parker, and it was sort of like an untold tale. This is not so much Peter and Gwen's date and the details of it, as it's about the feelings that were felt during it and the mindset during that time, told from a different perspective. Because in that story, it's sort of like a different perspective. Well, first of all, it's a different person. It's Ben Reilly, but this one, it's Peter. I mean, this Peter Parker who's telling this story right now, this might not even be the Peter of Peter Parker in Amazing Spider-Man #1. This could be the Peter Parker who's like old. Elderly age. We never know.
He's kissing MJ. You think that they'll be married till their elderly age?
Why wouldn't they?
I mean, it's it's the '90s. Who knows what can happen to her? She could turn into like a mutant or something, or get retconned into being a Hollow. Maybe she'll be a Skrull, just like because a few years ago they got rid of Johnny Storm's marriage. His wife turned out to be a Skrull.
Oh, that was crazy, wasn't it? Well, I can tell you that the only strange thing about this is Gwen spying on them from the picture book. That's actually kind of creepy if you think about it. But
I know that Gwen's happy about me and Mary Jane, which they said in the Clone Saga. Gwen's clone's like, I'm so happy to hear that you and Peter got married.
It's idealized to heck and back, but it's again. I mean, I don't want to use the phrase "Have you ever been in love before?" That's how you feel, but like it hits close to home. With
you're 9, so your opinion means nothing.
That's true. Well, I had a crush on a teacher, and that means everything to me. But like, which is following a cliche. But I think that this is very, to me, this doesn't feel like it's a Spider-Man book as much as it is a romance book. And I think that because it's written from that mindset, not just codified to, again, it's about the continuity. And they mention Peter going off to Canada and that the Hulk issue before this, they make reference to it. But you could tell this issue, I mean, this could be any character, and I think the point would still remain the same, honestly, because it has a certain legacy with Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man. It resonates much better, and it bites and stings much harder for you because people have taken that and just humped it to here and back. But because, again, I'm repeating myself over and over again, but it's because it's Peter Parker's perspective that it just makes it all the more stronger of a story in and of itself.
To be fair, it's over romanticized, but to be fair, that's like that is the point of the story, and it doesn't pretend to be like not over romanticized.
And I mean, and I just love the art. I mean, the shots of Harry flashing Gwen in that one panel. I mean, it's so beautiful. But I love the story, and I think I'm hogging the spotlight from John.
No, that's fine. I don't have a whole lot to say about this I haven't already said, so I'm just letting y'all go.
Yeah, but
there's not much more to say about the story.
I did love the fact that that Bertoni just lit on fire because it gets for good discussion.
Yeah, I feel bad that I've hated almost everything tonight.
Well, I kind of knew that was going to happen when we got into it. Just because, my 32-year-old self had written me a note about what your thoughts were on the reboot, and so I knew what to expect.
I don't hate this Kiss story. I just hate things about it, if that makes sense.
This Kiss.
Oh yeah,
that's a good Faith Hill song. That this new artist, Faith Hill.
She's a hottie.
It's the way you love me.
There is an ad in my copy
The jersey?
of Comicness that I'm looking at. I'm not sure if it was included in Webspinners or not, but it has Peter Parker all.
Oh no, it was.
Okay, and Spider-Man like jumping up behind him, going boo.
Yeah.
And it says, "Who is this Spider-Man, and why isn't he Peter Parker? The new spin begins." And at the bottom, it has Peter Parker Spider-Man number 1, and then Amazing Spider-Man number 1. I'm not sure why it's in that order. And below that, don't miss Web Spinners Tales of Spider-Man number 1. So this, I think, is a nice page. This would make me interested. So, okay, what the hell is going on with Spider-Man? It's a little bit of a WTF kind of thing, even though chat speak is still in its infancy.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the ad. It would make me say, WTF, I want to read this.
It's what the fun, right?
Yeah. What the fridge. So what comics are y'all reading that aren't Spider-Man right now?
I'm definitely picking up Batman, and I'm picking up Chuck Dixon's Robin book.
Dude, you remember Stephanie Brown, John?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stepped
I
on your
mentioned
toes,
her.
Don. I stepped on your toes.
No. Like, I was just about to mention that. Like, we'll talk about it, Josh. Like he got real. It got real with that book just now.
Okay, well, a few months ago, he and Ariana, they finally broke up, and because he's gonna start dating Spoiler now. And after their first date, John, get this, he drops a bomb on Spoiler Spoiler drops a bomb on him that she's pregnant.
Spoilers. Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that pregnant Spoiler is not the one that he's pounding on the cover of Robin 60?
No, that would be a bad story. He's not the father because, as she tells him, you can't get pregnant by one makeout session. And she wants to keep the baby.
Yeah, like she's like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
She's a teenager though, right? That's an
15?
interesting story for DC Comics to do.
15, 16?
Yes, it is. It's
that's kind of avant-garde, cutting-edge type stuff. That's pretty cool of them.
No Man's Land. It's going to be this Batman. So this earthquake that happened in earlier this year, Cataclysm. They're going to follow it up with No Man's Land. This Batman event where Gotham's going to be closed off, and we're actually going to have a Batgirl for the first time since 1988. Yeah.
Is this stuff that's happening now, or stuff that you've read about in Wizard or whatever?
Wizard says that there's going to be a new Batgirl. They don't say who she is, though. And her costume, it's covering all of her skin, so we don't even know what ethnicity she is. A lot of people think that it's Renee Montoya, and that's why, we don't see her skin, because they can't.
Renee's been shown incongruence with this. Not in the same scene, but I'm not sure why people think it would be Renee, but that would be really weird if it was Renee.
Yeah.
I like Renee. I mean, she has a relationship with Gordon. I like Renee.
It could be Sarah Essen. Isn't
she a hooker?
No. I don't know why someone would make that mistake, but no. She's right now. She's Commissioner Gordon's wife. And hopefully they'll be married for a really long time. And nothing bad will happen to her and No Man.
Young Justice number 4 came out. Like it was it's a news title that's basically like the Teen Titans sort of title, but it's pretty fun. But the ending to this latest issue was really dark. Like they had this this teenage villain named Harm, and he was killed by his father.
I've seen the covers for that comic. It looks like a sort of concept that would make a good animated series.
Yeah, Peter David, was writing it, and it's really good. And the team is starting to grow now.
They added the chicks.
Yeah, they added the chicks because for a while it was just Impulse, Robin, and Superboy. I keep on having the urge to call Impulse Kid Flash, but they made it very clear when he showed up in Zero Hour that he does not want to be called Kid Flash. He is Impulse, so I gotta keep that in mind. And
you might get over that though, because that was one of the first things that Superboy said was, "Don't call me Superboy."
Superman. Oh, it's Superboy. Yeah, right. Well, that jacket was cool for the early '90s. I think that style for Superboy now, he needs to change his look. It's 1998 now. He needs to get with the times.
He could even keep the same suit, just lose the jacket.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. But yeah, Peter David's Young Justice is good. His Supergirl is awesome. Who do you think the new Batgirl's going to be, Don?
Well, it's not Barbara. It's not Stephanie because she's preggers. I really don't have any idea because it's a new character. I think it's just. I mean, it says Batman since Batman disappeared for a while, he could have found a new person. I really don't have any idea who it is, but I love the costume. It's so different.
It could be an established character. It could be a new character. Because that's the thing. They'll tease you about who could it be, and you'll be going through all this list of people that you know, and then suddenly they'll take the mask off, and suddenly it's this person you've never ever met before.
Do you think it's Barbara, and she's regained her mobility, and she hasn't said anything?
I really hope it's not.
Because Bruce, he was in a wheelchair. He got out.
That is true.
It's comics. Anything can happen.
Anything and everything.
I mean, because right now, we have the new Batman, the Batman Superman Adventures. That's airing right now, and Barbara Gordon's Batgirl in that, and she plays a very prominent role in that series.
Yeah, but that would be like changing Tim. I mean, that would be like changing Tim Drake's costume to match that cartoon. I mean, it's a little too bit on the nose, and DC, they don't pander to the animated continuity too much. I mean, they just did another animated title called Gotham Adventures, which has been out for a few months. I mean, so they have that if they want to see Barbara Gordon as Batgirl.
Yeah, and I mean, and Barbara plays a prominent role in did you get the Sub-Zero VHS?
Yeah, that was pretty good. She played a big role in that movie.
Yeah, ironically, she was only Batgirl for like a minute. That came out this last March. Was really cool. Not as good as Mask of the Phantasm. I hope that they do more of these animated movies. Are you reading Daredevil? Karen Page has AIDS.
She what? How could
Yeah.
she possibly have gotten that?
Are you kidding me? Did you read Born Again?
No, at this point I've not read Born Again. No, what happens in Born Again?
Karen Page comes back after being away since the 70s, and turns out that in her spare time she's gone in the prostitution, the pornography, film industry, and drugs.
Now I haven't read that much Daredevil, but I remember somebody telling me that she was doing drugs all the way back in the 60s, like behind Matt's back and stuff. She was turning tricks. Is that true?
No, it was pretty clear in Born Again and in the books afterwards that this is something that she did afterwards when she went to Hollywood.
Okay.
For Marvel Comics to give one of their characters AIDS, we're in the age of Rent, which is a pretty cool Broadway play that's out right now. It's, I guess AIDS is like the disease of the 90s that it's kind of like the buzzword. And I'm wondering how far they're going to take this thing with Karen. But the problem is, if Karen doesn't die, if Karen gets cured of AIDS before there's a cure for AIDS in the real world, is that insulting,
Yeah, I see where they could go with that. I mean, it's one thing to have generic crippling injury be healed or whatever, but to have something relevant, it's the same reason why they didn't have all the superheroes go to World War II in the World War II era. Sure, in 1975, you can make the invaders go fight Nazis in Europe, but in 1942, you're not going to have Superman go and beat up Hitler and Stalin and everything. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
Oh, why not? Yeah, so it's I wonder what they are going to do. It's the story is really good though. There's some machinations going on.
Well, usually when you have AIDS, you die. So maybe Karen's on her way out of the book.
Maybe.
I don't think so.
Well, I wonder if Matt's going to get AIDS because they're together.
That would be a really weird direction to take your main superhero character.
He's blind and he has AIDS. Yikes.
I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. And if there are any listeners out there who are HIV positive, we're definitely not trying to be insensitive about that.
Oh no.
It would be an interesting direction to take that character.
A blind character AIDS, shit.
All of a sudden, guys, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting fatter and older, and my hair's falling out of my head.
Hair's everywhere. My hair's everywhere.
Bill Clinton, what's going on to him? He turned into George Bush's son, and now George Bush is black.
It's the worst we could have ever dreamed of.
Spoiler: she's given birth. She's given up her baby, and Spider-Man. Oh my God! You don't want to know what they've done to Spider-Man.
Made him black too.
Batman and you did what? Wow! Look at all these superhero movies that have come out in the past 5 seconds.
Oh my God! We still don't know who hired the Scorpion or what the frick Senator Ward was up to. Oh, no, never mind. I guess that goes along with what we're going to discuss in a little bit.
Yeah, okay, so we're magically transitioning back to the real world where it's 2011 and we're not pretending that it's 1998 anymore. And so, yeah, we hope you enjoyed our look back at the reboot in honor of DC's reboot month, September, with the New 52.
Which we'll all buy and none of us will drop.
Let's hope that you'll do better than this Spider-Man one.
Let's hope that the plot threads that all of the current DC writers for the New 52, all the plot threads they plant in number 1, let's hope those actually get resolved.
Yeah.
Because, Josh, tell us what I found to be a promising start. And although y'all dissed a lot on it, I found it to be a promising start to the reboot. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, Senator Ward goes nowhere. People talk about it for a while. They're inconsistent in Senator Ward's own knowledge of his involvement in the mystery. Like, one issue he's talking to Arthur Stacy. I know what you did. Well, I know that you know what I did. Well, we both know what you did. Yes, and the world will know what you did one day, Senator Ward. Not if I can help it. And then 2 issues later, Senator Ward, is like, I don't know what everyone's talking about. I don't know. And then, he Kirby crackles and says, yes, I remember. And then those Kirby crackles were like a separate entity from him. Then they were the same entity. Then they weren't. And the mystery had no clear purpose, and it was inconsistent. Who hired the Scorpion? We never find out, and why they were after Peter Parker. Now, later on, Captain Power shows up. We're not even going to discuss Captain Power and that effing reboot. We didn't even discuss in that backup story how they had Peter's old origin of, the science lab explosion. But anyway, Captain Power was a character whose origin tied to Chapter 1, and he was looking for survivors of the lab explosion, and one of them was Peter Parker. That's who people guess might have been, the one hiring Scorpion to go after Peter Parker, but it was never confirmed, and there's some inconsistencies between that backup story and when we actually see Captain Power, so we never find out who it is. And, instead of concentrating on the mysteries that he has, Howard Mackie gives us more mysteries, like giving Mary Jane a mysterious stalker who is
Facade? No.
Yeah, who has exploding lollipops, who kills Mary Jane, but wait, she's not dead, but Peter thinks she's dead for a while. We get a lot of bad stories. Mysterio kills himself over in Daredevil, but they forget to tell the writers of Amazing, who have Mysterio continue to appear for a few more months before Spider-Man says, wait a second, aren't you dead? That's a mystery that's not solved for a while. And then when
really?
Yeah, that storyline with Flash Thompson in the virtual reality world, that was when Mysterio was supposed to be dead. So... it's okay, because they brought Quentin Beck back, and it's 2011 now, and they still haven't explained how Mysterio's alive again after getting brain cancer and shooting himself in front of Daredevil. Jill Stacy was, played up as Peter's new love interest. Thank God that didn't last. Flash Thompson was regressed back to a buffoon who picks on Peter and who laughs at him for having dead girlfriends. Peter's like, everyone that Peter loves dies, like Mary Jane and Gwen. Ain't that a hoot?
It's writing at his quality finest.
Yes. Oh, Howard Mackie at his finest. Plot lines are dropped, and it just... Yeah, Senator Ward's never solved. The Ranger comes back. It's every...
What I want to know is, how...
Tricorp. All those new characters that we met this issue, they were never developed, and they were dropped.
How immediate was the fan reaction? Like how immediate was the burn? How fast did you piss off
the burnout?
Yeah.
Oh, I think right away it was. They were already ticked over the way that it happened, because Baby May's coming back just like you wanted. All right, fans, behind this door is Baby May. Get ready to give that baby a hug. Oh, it's Aunt May, and she hit Peter on the head with a vase and said, "Get away, you horrible creature." So that made fans pissed off.
Did she take him out to the Hollywood desert to do that?
No, but yeah, it's...
With the enforcers.
Yeah, plot lines that, and then plot lines that were left unresolved during the pre-reboot era, like who is the new Green Goblin? Yeah, they resolved that by unmasking him as what JR likes to call a clone of nobody. Peter takes off his mask. He's like, Harry? And then he says, no, I'm not Harry. If I was Harry, then maybe Norman would have loved me. Then he shapeshifts into about 3 other people, then melts.
Makes sense to me.
Yep. Then that same story, Liz tells Peter that she can't be around him because he kills everyone he loves. Peter falls asleep on the streets in an alley and gets his costume stolen because he's homeless.
And then that era ends, and then JMS and Paul Jenkins come on the book, and then the books are awesome.
Paul Jenkins and Howard Mack, because at one point Howard Mackey couldn't do Amazing and Peter Parker, so Paul Jenkins took over Peter Parker, and the quality improved somewhat. But after Mary Jane died, there was a really weird thing where Peter was living with Randy, and Randy was acting like Mary Jane had been dead for 30 years, and Peter had to go get laid right now. It was Peter, and he was hanging out with Randy. Randy was dating Glory, and Jill was there and being teased as a romantic interest with Peter. And they were all like, come on, Peter, Mary Jane's been dead for a week. You got to go out and get some girls. Come on, Peter. What, you're still crying about your dead wife? Jeez, get over it. It's been a month.
That sounds really terrible.
Yeah. At one point, they Randy finds a woman online who's on house arrest and has a wristband, and then Peter's like, wow, this woman's a felon and possibly a killer, I'm not gonna date her. And then Jill and Gloria are like, Randy, you set Peter up with her. It's very and then Jill's like, don't worry, Peter, you'll find someone. And then their faces get closer and closer, like they're about to kiss. And then Peter's like, Mary Jane's alive, and I'll find her one day.
I know he visits Dr. Doom and runs the Incredible Hulk looking for her.
I mean, you're asking me to say what happened during the reboot. I could talk for hours about, everything that went wrong during. I just did an article on Crawlspace about, just the parts of the reboot that focused on Betty Brant and Flash Thompson's relationship. And even those parts, that was, the most inconsistent thing in the world. Howard Mackey couldn't decide if Betty Brant and Flash Thompson were dating or not.
And the thing is, Howard Mackey is currently writing all of Spider-Man. He's doing The Amazing Spider-Man, and he's doing Peter Parker Spider-Man. It's not a bi-weekly Spider-Man title, because actually it's 2 next to each other weeks. And I'm not sure how much the stories overlapped, but Howard Mackey is writing Spider-Man. So he should be able to keep a consistent character thread with Betty Brant and Flash, and he doesn't. What about you, Don? What are your thoughts about the reboot?
Well, since I've aged 13 years, okay, when the reboot happened, I very much remember Aunt May coming back and the chapter, the Gathering of the Five and everything. But the actual reboot itself, I have very dim memories of, probably because I was so wrapped up with Batman that I probably didn't concentrate on what's going on with Spider-Man. So a lot of the reboot trappings that people recall that sucked, I honestly have no memory of, and I really don't remember very well until honestly the JMS era. I remember reading the first JMS story from the get-go, and this. Well, no, actually, it was the story where Mary Jane comes back that I remember after she was presumed dead, and which sucked ass, and it sucked ass because it was just it was so cheap the way it was written. She's I need to find myself. He's like, oh, okie dokie.
And JMS began writing in issue 31, 32, somewhere around there, so it's not that far in the future from where we are now.
Issue 30, I believe.
Issue 30, okay. So that's, 2.5 years. So right. Howard Mackey and whoever followed him, if anyone did, for the next 2.5 years is this era that people tend to revile as much as or more than the One More Day and After It type of stories.
Well, the hell of it is that when I've been reading these issues for the purposes of this show, there are so many trappings of both Brand New Day and Big Time that are ripped off from this era. I'm shocked are taken as well as they are. Seriously, the whole Tricorp thing. I know people were saying Horizons Labs was a Tricorp ripoff. It really is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
yes, down to the whole set your own hours and come in whenever the heck you want. That's what they told Peter during the initial story.
The conversation that Peter has with his new boss is beat for beat the conversation that he has with Quan in this issue. Was that her name, Quan? It's it's the same conversation with a different artist drawing the people.
This job, which is too good to be true.
The only thing that's missing is the cabinet with the secret key that only you can access, that you can put all your secret projects in. That
make sure you put your secret identity stuff in here.
Right. I'm still waiting for that to come back and bite him in the ass.
Which I'm sure it will, or maybe it won't. But yeah,
you don't make something that's super secret that only one person can access, and then not have somebody else find out how to access it. That's just how those things work.
I read these new when I was a kid, and I enjoyed them somewhat, but like I kind of felt the sense as a kid that something was like off and missing. And I mean, even as a kid, like I knew that the Senator Ward stuff was inconsistent, and like that bothered me. There was a special subscription thing that Marvel offered, like in the books, that my mom got me for like a gift or something because I got to go to report card, where you can like. They had a pack where if you subscribe to both Amazing and Peter Parker, like, you know, both of the continuity Spider-Man titles, then you would get like, you know, a discounted price. So we did that for a while, and that subscription renewed every year. And towards the end of the Mackie run, I was still getting the books, but I would let them pile up in my room because like I just wasn't reading them anymore because they were poor. But then when they brought Mary Jane back at the end, like I started reading again. Because Mary Jane was brought back at the end of Mackey's run.
So, I for the most part enjoyed the setup issues. I have not read this era of Spider-Man. It's one of my big blank spots in the history of the character. So I fully understand that if you're gonna set up some mysteries and set up some storylines, those can be intriguing. If you take those nowhere and you never resolve them, and you never explain the things you set up, and it becomes obvious that you actually had no idea what the hell you were doing it from day one, then that is poor writing. So I can accept that this was a very, very bad era, even though I liked the issues that we read tonight, with the exception of that first Webspinner story, because oh my effing God, was that art terrible. So we hope you enjoyed this look back at the reboot. I don't know if this is going to be 1 or 2 episodes. This is probably the second of 2 episodes.
It's 2 episodes. Don't kid yourself, man. Unless this is going to be like a supersized episode.
I'll just have to see how the edits are going when I get into the edit room. Like I have a special edit room. And yeah, next episode we will be back on track for normal Spider-Man goodness, with myself and Josh and Don, just the 3 of us, looking at Amazing Spider-Man 48, and then 49, and then 50 comes afterwards. And for that episode, we will have a special guest. Do we have anything else to add before we sign off?
I think Josh needs to drink a warm glass of milk, eat a sandwich, as Aunt may like to prescribe. Just take a deep breath.
And with Dawn whispering sweet nothings to Josh to get him to calm down, we are going to bring this episode to a close. Hope you enjoyed the special format for the last couple of episodes. The idea behind it was that, DC Comics has brought all of their comic series to a close and are relaunching all of their characters with new number 1s during the month of September. So we thought we would take a look at Spider-Man's own effort to do the same with his reboot of the series back in late 1998. And I hope that it worked for you. We're back to regular format next episode with Amazing Spider-Man 48. And I hope that you enjoyed our little departure. I also hope that you're enjoying the books that DC Comics is putting out. As this is going out, 14 of the titles have been released, and I enjoyed all of them. Some of them were definitely less stellar than others, but I didn't think there was a bad one necessarily in the bunch. And Action Comics was my standout favorite. So if you are fond of Superman, and if you want to see a Superman who is not scared to kind of rough up some people in order to get them to confess to their wrongdoings, then check out Action Comics number 1 at the local comic shop or at Hastings. Even if you're new to comics, just look up comics on the internet and find out where they're located in your area and go see about getting Action Comics number 1. That is a great book. With the gimmick, though, that we've been doing, we didn't get to mention the sponsor for Amazing Spider-Man Classics last episode, so definitely want to give them some attention here. Roll2Play is the funding source for every episode of Amazing Spider-Man Classics, and they are located at roll2play.com. They are your online source for games and gaming accessories, including a bunch of dice games, which are all 15% off on the site. They have a new Iron dice game coming out in November that is looking pretty cool, and they're one of the very few stores in Texas that will be carrying it. So if you're not going to be finding this in very many stores, the online is the best way to go, and Roll2Play can help you get your copy. Also, Roll2Play has a Games for Grunts program where you can make a purchase of any number of games and have them sent to troops overseas to help give them a pleasant time whenever they're off duty. The process for that is that you place an order for whatever games you want to have sent. At the payment screen, you enter Games for Grunts as a discount code. The entire purchase is discounted 20%. You do not pay for shipping, and all of the orders for the soldiers are sent over in one bulk shipment, several orders all at one go. So do please consider making an order for our soldiers overseas, and that is at roll2play.com, all one word, spelled with the number 2, which is also what you can input into Facebook if you want to search them out there and like their page. The next episode will be back to regular format with Amazing Spider-Man 48. In the meantime, if you want to send us your emails telling us what you thought of the issues we have covered or what we have said about them, the email address is amazingspidermanclassics@gmail.com, and we do read emails pretty regularly on this show. Also, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Amazing Spider-Man Classics. You can like that page to get updates for new episodes and interact with us there in a less formal environment. We do enjoy talking to our listeners. Also, our every episode is posted at SpidermanCrawlspace.com, who is a very big supporter of the show. It's an excellent website for all of your Spider-Man news, so do check them out. And of course, the main website for the show is amazingspiderman.libsyn.com, where you can look at the show postings, download current or older episodes, which you can also get from iTunes. If you do go to iTunes, we do ask that you leave a review, let other people know why you like or don't like the show, and your reviews will be read on the air, because we do appreciate everyone's kind words there. And I think I'm running out of things to say. I definitely feel like I'm repeating myself, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. See you again in about 10 days for Amazing Spider-Man Classics, coverage of the new Vulture coming back to threaten Spider-Man's life. Until then, my name is John Wilson, and thank you for listening to Amazing Spider-Man Classics in association with SpidermanCrawlspace.com. Good night.
Dun 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 dun.
So yeah,
13 years later, like, we could say, like, yeah, they never did resolve that Senator Ward thing, and yeah, we never did find out who gave the Scorpion his new makeover, and yeah, we never did find out half the fucking things in the issue, but it's okay, it's a good issue, it's a good issue, it's full of setup that never fucking got resolved.
Nice.
That whole voice, like, okay, by the way, because I can't say this during the show, that whole voice that's like, Senator Ward, this horrible thing that happened, yeah, they go back and forth throughout Mackey's run. Like, everyone talks about this thing, but never gets so specific to it. Like, Arthur Stacy's like, I know what you did, and then Senator Ward's like, I know you know what I did. Well, we're going to talk about what you did. Well, what I did is what I did. And then all of a sudden, the Sinister Six, a few issues later, kidnaps Senator Ward, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember what I did. I don't have powers. And then his powers manifest. He's like, oh yeah, I do have powers, but except like 2 issues before, you didn't. You knew you did. God, this thing was fucking fail.
Yeah, it's end of 97, early 98.
Night in my dreams.
And just to break the fourth wall for a second, I'm not trying to be parodying. This is exactly the way I felt in 1998. So, anyways.
Oh, I figured.
No, I didn't watch it when I was
okay, dude, John Wilson, like, seriously, like, thinks that South Park is inappropriate? Yeah, okay, like, yeah, we all took that at face value. Writing the Peter Parker Spider-Man title, doing a Peter Remembers Uncle Ben story every single issue.
He didn't do it every single issue. He did like.
He did it enough.
Do they really do that? Does that become a thing for this book?
Paul Jenkins, yes.
Wrote, like,
there's like Peter and Uncle Ben go to the Mets game. Peter talks to Uncle Ben's grave. Peter remembers building snowmen with Uncle Ben. Peter and Uncle Ben. Peter kisses Uncle Ben's corpse. Peter and Uncle Ben are together forever. It becomes a shipper book for Peter and Uncle Ben. It becomes, you know, like that story that we're going to cover in Webspinners with Gwen. Imagine that, except it's Uncle Ben. Everything that Uncle Ben did was perfect, and Uncle Ben always knew the right thing to say. And Uncle Ben was magic, I tell you, magic. You know.
Hey! I got that last story with Uncle Ben and him in like the grave site from Comic-Con. That story is awesome, all right.
It's awesome, but it was every issue.
It wasn't every issue. It was like
it was
a recurring story for Paul Jenkins, but it wasn't every issue.
It was okay. It wasn't every single issue, but like it was more reoccurring than it should have been. It happened more than like 3 or 4 times.
I will give you that it was because I think it was before it was around this time where he wrote his first Uncle Ben story. The cover with Spider-Man like hugging the webs or whatever. So I will give you that like the theme is sort of redundant, but they're written well every time.
They're written well, but like you can write a good story, but if you write that same good story 3 or 4 times, you know, it's still the same story 3 or 4 times.